The screen flickered to life without warning. A black flag hung motionless against an empty sky. The desert stretched behind two figures, fixed on the horizon beneath the sun. One man was dressed in orange, kneeling and still, resigned to his fate. The other, dressed entirely in black, was standing over him. His face concealed, his voice composed, and his accent unmistakably British. From that moment onwards, living rooms across the United States, the United Kingdom, and far beyond fell silent. The footage was viewed by millions, and the appalling images were burned into memory. Suddenly, the masked man started talking. He spoke calmly, as if reading from a script he'd been rehearsing for years. Then, he reached forward and grabbed the man's jaw. By the end of the video, an American journalist named James Foley was dead. Within weeks, many more videos followed. Released deliberately, timed carefully, and designed to be seen. Stephen Sotloff, David Haynes, Alan Henning, Peter Kassig, Haruna Yakawa, Kenji Goto. Each time, the same setting, the same masked executioner, the same haunting voice, and the same outcome. The Western world did not know his name, could not see his face, but it knew that voice. News anchors replayed fragments of it all over the world, and he was quickly given a nickname by the British press, Jihadi John, a faceless figure who seemed to materialise from nowhere. And the most chilling thing, he didn't look like a warlord, and he didn't sound like a foreign fighter raised in distant conflict. He sounded like someone who could have sat next to you on the underground. For months, intelligence agencies hunted a ghost, a masked murderer who had become the most recognisable face of ISIS terror in years without ever revealing his own. How could a young British university graduate vanish into the chaos of war-torn Syria and reappear as the masked executioner known around the world as Jihadi John? Why did Western intelligence fail to track him sooner, despite multiple warning signs and online activity that might have exposed him long before the world knew his voice and his knife? When did ISIS choose him, or permit him, to become the face and voice of their executions? And what evidence ultimately unmasked Jihadi John, revealing that beneath the mask was someone who had once lived like any other Londoner long before disappearing into the conflict?
Hello and welcome to I Could Murder, a podcast. We are back in the darkest series ever, covering a case which covers a video that is burnt deep into the memories of many people. And I know it's a video that affected all of us at a younger age. Without further ado, Benny Carter, how are you?
Hello. Yeah, I've been kind of dreading this one since we sat down and started the series. Very visceral memories of this period in time. Yeah, one that I'm feeling a bit nauseous about covering, really. How are we? Producer Dan.
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Fun fact before we begin, I've been listening to a lot of Enya.
Ooh.
I found a new appreciation for Enya.
Sail away.
In it, yeah. Very nostalgic, actually. So, but no, this one's a tough. But this one's an interesting one, actually, because when I was doing a bit of reading, obviously a lot of the stills of the video that we're going to talk about came up. And I had a really kind of visceral sort of reaction. Like I had heart palpitations, I had like a lot of memories from the case, reading about it at the time. And I think actually my brain, after watching the video, because, we must have watched it on like Live Leak or something like that at the time. I feel like my brain suppressed it almost immediately afterwards and kind of deleted it, because reading about it recently, like I said, I had such a horrible reaction about the video, and it's such a graphic, gruesome thing to happen. Unlike a lot of the other cases that we talk about, I do kind of often remember them and remember the details quite well. But this one, my brain, zap.
Wow. I would have assumed the opposite for you for some reason, and that this would be one that really stood out and you remembered well. But I completely understand what you're saying. I was in I was in America at the time that the first video came out, and it came out the day after my birthday, and I'd had a particularly heavy night in New Orleans. And so I was not in a great way anyway, but then I remember watching the video in that state, and then the announcement of other detainees. They had other prisoners, captives that they had, and the warning kind of countdown beginning for a new video coming out was a terrifying thought. And then obviously it turned to UK prisoners as well, and you learned about them before the video would then later emerge, and it's devastating in a way unlike any other case we've covered this series. It's yeah, visceral is again, say it for the third time. It's a very visceral feeling, this one.
Yes, yeah, as the lad said, visceral. But it's a particularly dark one, and yeah, again, very important one to cover. Very different to the other ones we've done this series, but yeah, it's not going to be an easier ride, that is for sure. But without any further ado, Ben, what is today's case?
So this week, Series 13, Episode 10, The Hunt for Jihadi John, also referred to as The Terrifying Crimes of Mohammed Emwazi. From London to ISIS, the making of Jihadi John, the world's most wanted executioner, and Jihadi John, the man behind the mask.
So long before he became known to the world as Jihadi John, he was just a boy growing up somewhere far removed from the chaos that he would one day enter. Mohammed Emwazi was born on the 17th of August 1988 in the city of Al Jahara, Kuwait. He was the eldest of 6 children born to Yassim and Ghanier Emwazi. Growing up in a busy family household alongside a young brother called Omar and 4 younger sisters, Shaima, Azra, Hannah and Asma. The family lived in what was described as a heavily impoverished slum town ghetto, and were very much on the brink of poverty. Not much else is known about the family's time in Kuwait. His parents were of Iraqi origin and belonged to a group in Kuwait known as Badoon. So the term Badoon quite literally means without nationality. It refers to a population of people who, for a variety of historical and political reasons, were never granted official citizenship or documentation in Kuwait. And as a result, many lived in a kind of legal grey area, often unable to access the same rights, opportunities, education, employment and security as recognised citizens would. For many families, just like the Emwazis, this status could mean limited prospects and uncertain futures, something that likely played a role in the decision to eventually leave Kuwait and start a new life elsewhere. In 1993, when Mohammed was just 6 years old, the family left Kuwait and moved to the United Kingdom. Like many families searching for opportunity and stability at the time, they settled in West London, a part of the city that had been shaped by immigration and diversity. At first, the Emwazi family rented a 3-bedroomed first-floor flat in Warwick Crescent in Little Venice. From there, they moved to a rundown terrace house in nearby Desborough Close, which was surrounded by council blocks. Eventually, they settled in an Edwardian mansion block in Maida Vale, one of the most expensive neighbourhoods in the country. Over the following years, as his father's business took off, they would move several more times to nearby flats and houses in the area, later to properties near Lord's Cricket Ground and the Mozart Estate in Queen's Park. Throughout the time, the Emwazi household remained busy and tightly knit. Mohammed's father ran a taxi business, while his mother focused on raising their 6 children, some of whom were born after the move to England. The family eventually settled into life in West London, where the children attended local Church of England schools and began building their lives in the capital. Mohammed himself attended Quinton Kynaston Academy, a secondary school in the area that would educate thousands of London students over the years. To those around him at the time, Mohammed did not appear remarkable. A school friend who attended the academy with him between 2004 and 2006 later recalled that he seemed like a nice guy who was down to earth and loved S Club 7 and football.
Reach.
Follow that mountain.
Reach.
Head
For
for
the
the
stars.
moon. Oh,
Is it not?
just there's a bit
But
where they
less
break
about
it
it.
all down later in the track.
Ah, yeah. Cool.
The mishmash, really.
Adding that he
Don't
was...
Gotta get up, gotta get something, reach the top.
stop.
Bring it all back to you.
Bring it all back now.
So his friend continued, after being interrupted by people singing, that he was not believed to have been particularly religious or hateful during those years, and that he picked up the nickname Little Mo due to how small he was. Nothing to do with EastEnders, I imagine. One of his former head teachers would later suggest that Mohammed was heavily bullied during his childhood for having bad breath. See, that was an altercation basically with a girl who was speaking to, basically, called him out and said he had bad breath, and then he got bullied a little bit for that. He also wasn't able to maintain eye contact, really, with people when he spoke to them, and that kind of made him an easy target for people, which is heartbreaking, really. And another detail that would later draw media attention was that he was thought to have been in the very same school year as Talisa from N-Dubs, who would later become a household name as a judge on The X Factor.
Yeah, I don't get... Is that just... Why did that really become a headline? Just coincidence?
I think if people are famous people who are in the same school years as people that go on to do horrendous things, I don't know. I would say I find that semi-interesting.
Yeah, semi-interesting is fair. Seeing Talisa in papers about Jihadi John did raise an eyebrow. As a boy, Mohammed appeared quiet, studious, and largely unremarkable. Teachers described him as polite, diligent, and reserved, the kind of student who blended in easily to the everyday nature of school life. But, like many other young children growing up between cultures, he was exposed to two different worlds: the traditions and expectations of his family, and the modern Western environment in London life. It was also a time when the world around him was changing dramatically. On the 11th of September 2001, when Mohammed was just 13 years old, the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York would shake the world. Nearly 3,000 people were killed that day in what would become known as the deadliest terrorist attack in modern history. In the years that followed, the global response to those attacks would soon reshape politics, foreign policy, and a great deal of public attitude across the West. Britain soon found itself deeply involved in the conflicts that followed. Military operations in Afghanistan began in late 2001, and just 2 years later, the invasion of Iraq would ignite a war that dominated headlines for much of Mohammed's teenage years. Images of bombings, civilian casualties, and mayhem became a constant presence on TV screens and in newspapers. For many young Muslims growing up in Western countries during that period, the atmosphere could feel increasingly tense and confrontational. Debates about terrorism, religion, immigration, and national identity became louder and rapidly more polarized. It is possible that he, his friends, or his family were racially prejudiced during this time. And as Tom alluded to, there's in this documentary I watched about him, there's for some reason a TV crew were filming at his school towards the end of his school term, and you see him as a child, and he was playing, like in an IT lesson, he was playing video games on the computer and stuff like that. You saw him, they just happened to be filming a group of kids and he's there. And then at one point you see him talking to other people, and it's almost like professional football, sports people these days. He kind of puts his hand over his mouth when he's talking. And is that because of the bullying about the bad breath, or is that just him trying to hide his words from the camera? Way ahead of his time, if so. But there was also a really sad moment where it was the last day of term, and all the kids were, when you get your like polo shirt signed from all your friends on the last day, everyone was signing everyone's shirts, all covered in writing, and then there was just a shot where he was in the background waiting for a bus, completely clean shirt and just not involved. So yeah, the idea that he got bullied or was a bit of an outcast at school, you could, from that footage alone, I know it's hard to get the idea, but it did seem that way. It was very upsetting.
I would have thought the hand-to-mouth thing probably is related to the breath thing. I think, yeah. Unless he's saying anything, he's not saying anything. I know he was very into his football. Man United fan, but yeah, I don't think he was saying any tactics they didn't want them to see.
From London?
I think I've still got my signed shirt from Meridian School.
Do you think you'll ever look at it ever again?
Probably not, and it's probably eaten to death by moths at this point.
Oh. Mm. Did you have any nicknames at school, Dan? Before the Chase times? No, yeah.
No, Chase was the big one.
That's because at Kiss Chase, he would be relentless and he wouldn't stop.
Don't know.
Chase. Oh. It was so bad that they called him Chase.
Come here.
He's so quick, I just can't get away from him.
Oh.
I did have the school record for 1 year for the 100-metre sprint. So.
Did you? I was 100 metres as well.
We should have a race.
We need
spikes on.
Bonsey could be the fourth relay runner.
Go on, Bonds.
Pass the pipe.
Who's the third one?
Me.
Oh. Just for fun, yeah? Not racing and not like...
I ran county back in the day.
Did you?
Once.
What
100 metres, yeah. 100 metres. And they also put me on hurdles, which I hated. But I did okay. I came like 4th or 5th.
Hurdles is shit.
Hurdles was, if you don't know how to jump properly, it's a nightmare. Then, in July of 2005, when Mohammed was 16 years old, London itself became the target of another devastating terrorist attack. 4 suicide bombers struck the city's transport system during the morning rush hour, killing 52 people and seriously injuring many hundreds more. The attacks would later become known simply as 7/7. And if you're not aware, we've covered both 7/7 and the 9/11 attacks previously on the podcast. Absolutely devastating cases. And this case kind of feeds directly into both of them. In the weeks and months that followed, the country, and London in particular, was overwhelmed with both fear and anger. Security measures tightened, police powers expanded, and public suspicion toward extremism intensified. For many British Muslims, the years that followed were incredibly hostile. People seemed more distant and more suspicious. It's impossible to say exactly how these events impacted Mohammed personally, but they definitely formed a big part of his teenage years. Against that time period, the quiet student from West London continued moving through adolescence, focusing on school, friendships, and eventually university. To those around him, he still appeared to be just another young man trying to find his place in the world. He was still Little Mo to them. By the time he reached adulthood, Mohammed's intelligence had begun to show. He was particularly skilled at mathematics and computing, subjects that would eventually lead him to enroll at the University of Westminster to study information systems with business management. To those that knew him then, he was simply another student, quiet, intelligent, and focused on building a future for himself. However, there were small glimpses of a more complicated personality beneath the surface. One former acquaintance would later recall an incident from 2008 when Mohammed was 19 that hinted at a more aggressive side to the young man. And I had no idea about all of this in his background at all. I knew the whole thing about it was a quiet, didn't seem to, be untypical in any way young man that moved across the country. I didn't know anything about this in terms of his background. I don't remember it being news at the time when it eventually came out and they identified him. But this is quite drastic. According to the account, tensions between rival neighbourhoods and, quote, postcode rivalries in West London had escalated into violence after Mohammed and his younger brother Omar were suddenly attacked. The acquaintance later explained the following.
I went to Mohammed's house to buy a bike off Omar. He sold stolen bikes to people at school and you'd get a big discount. I was planning an in and out job, but 2 guys saw me. There was a big fight. They threw a brick at my head and broke my arm. Omar was punched in the face a few times and beaten up. The next day, Mohammed turned up with 2 religious guys with beards. They drove round in a car and found these 2 guys who attacked us, threatened them with a gun, made them take all their clothes off and drove off. They dumped them on the M1 motorway. They weren't attacked physically, but they were threatened. It was a message. I saw the guys next day at school and they apologised to me. Mohammed was a bit of a hard nut. He wasn't into gangs, but people were wary of him. They were pretty scared.
Years later, in 2012, Mohammed's younger brother Omar appeared before Isleworth Crown Court after being charged with handling stolen bicycles. He was ultimately convicted and ordered to complete 100 hours of community service, as well as pay £800 in prosecution costs. Interestingly, just a few months earlier, Mohammed himself faced very similar accusations. In 2 separate trials, however, he was acquitted of the same charges, leaving the cases against him unresolved in the eyes of the court. So, according to this one person, he was very involved and then turned up the next day with 2 older men and they did this to the guy. However, in court, he's been considered not involved.
And it was a time when CCTV was prevalent, so it's an interesting one. From the research I'd done on the case, I hadn't heard much about this particular incident, but I know he started mixing around with the wrong people, and this obviously seems to go along with that.
Yeah, definitely.
The incidents with stolen bikes were more than just teenage rebellion. They were the earliest insights into a young, troubled man, mixing with other men who would later follow a much darker path. A friend would later tell NBC News that Mohammed had been associating with a small group of armed muggers in London, stalking victims on bicycles in affluent areas like Belgravia, Fulham and Chelsea, threatening them with high-voltage stun guns, taking watches and mobile phones. One member of the gang, Chukri El-Khalifi, had been a school friend of Mohammed's and would later die fighting alongside Al-Qaeda in Syria in 2013. Others in Mohammed's circle, including Mohammed El-Araj and the other brother of another school friend, would also be killed abroad in the name of extremist Islam. Experts and analysts later described Mohammed's connections in London as deep and wide. Peter Neumann, director of the International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation at King's College in London, would note that he would have associated with a lot of extremist people over a very long period of time, so he's not someone who was radicalised only because of the Syria conflict. He'd been part of the London scene for years before that. These early incidents and friendships, even as a teenager, combined with multiple brushes with the law, put Mohammed on a trajectory that would take him from the quiet streets of West London to the violent landscapes of Syria, a path on which acquaintances, friends, and even his own schoolmates were already fighting and dying.
So whereas we mentioned earlier he was found not guilty of his involvement in the violence associated with the bike stealing and the bike selling, this seems more concrete in terms of they're saying he was known to intelligence to have been associating with extremists or people that were looking to radicalize individuals. And this is now where things really start to take quite a drastic turn in his life.
Despite stories like this emerging many years later, there was little at the time that clearly pointed toward the path Mohammed would eventually take. Like many young men in London, he spent time with friends, attended university lectures, and began thinking about his future after graduation. He got his lower class second degree in information systems with business management at the University of Westminster in 2009. And by then he was 21 years old, and outwardly at least seemed to be fitting in with society in a fairly ordinary way. He worked remotely as a salesman for an IT company based in Kuwait, occasionally travelling there too, and was even considered by his boss as the best employee the company had ever had. He started making plans for marriage, speaking to a potential fiancée back in Kuwait, and preparing to travel there to finalise the arrangement. That same summer, however, a trip abroad would mark the beginning of a chain of events that would dramatically alter the direction of his life. In 2009, Mohammed travelled to Tanzania with two friends, claiming the trip was simply a post-university safari with mates before continuing on to Kuwait. That sounds quite good though, doesn't it? Post-uni safari trip with mates?
I've never been on a safari.
Me neither, actually.
Or one with mates.
I'd only do a wild one though.
Oh yeah.
Not a safari in Woburn.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I've heard it's good, but
I'd say, Woburn approve more of that than zoos. I mean, yeah, it sounds good, but I don't think that's the reason why he was going, Dan.
No. However, shortly after arriving, the group were detained and prevented from entering the country altogether. According to Mohammed's later account, they were held for around 24 hours before being placed on a flight to Amsterdam and then back to the UK. It was there, he claimed, that British intelligence officers first confronted him. An MI5 officer reportedly accused him of attempting to travel onward to militant camps in Somalia, which was a region where the militant group Al-Shabaab controlled large areas at the time. Mohammed denied the accusation, insisting that the trip had been nothing more than a holiday. Years later, he would describe the moment bluntly.
When I was face to face with the officer, he said to me, "Mohammed, what do you think of 7/7? I thought he wanted to see my instant reaction, so I told him that it was nothing else but extremism." One thing I'll say about this is he did have military jackets packed with them. So he still tried to lean in and say, "Oh, it's just for safari," and he started bringing out other jackets he had. It's like, "Oh, does this mean I'm also going to be doing this?" So yeah, from his account, obviously he was going there innocently, but it was very much believed he was going this route to make it less obvious. He was obviously being tracked because of his behaviour and people he was associating with in the UK. So yeah, I mean, I think MI5 did a good job here by recognising him doing this and then sending him right back. But yeah, I think him being quite blasé about it and he's being quite arrogant with how they were, talking to him, and he was kind of not having much of it and getting agitated by the questions.
Yeah, this seemed to create even more urgency. I mean, whether the urgency was already there anyway, because he had plans or arrangements, but this seemed to be the fact that he claimed it was him being stopped not only for this safari, but later saying he wanted to go and get engaged and have a wedding over in Kuwait. That was like apparently the tipping point for not being allowed to enter. And apparently his father would regularly go back between the UK and Kuwait and travel with absolute, no issues at all. Because he already had some suspicion around him, that seemed to anger him greatly.
Following the interrogation, Mohammed returned to Britain, but according to the accounts he later shared with the controversial Islamic rights advocacy group, CAGE, scrutiny from security services did not end there. He claimed that he was repeatedly stopped, questioned, harassed and monitored during any of his attempts to travel abroad. At one point, he described being detained at Heathrow Airport where, as he put it, I had my DNA taken, fingerprints and around about 10 photos taken, with one holding a paper that had numbers and letters on it. And around this time, he also claimed that contact from security officials had reached his fiance's family back in Kuwait, something he believed ultimately ended any possibility for the engagement to happen. According to the account provided to CAGE, the approach by authorities had the effect of scaring her and her family away from him. From that moment, their marriage was over. See, I think his fiance's family were just, they weren't extremists by any stretch. They were a Muslim family, but, didn't have any kind of extreme links themselves. So them being questioned, bringing this trouble to the door and drama to their door, they weren't having any of it, and it ended his relationship. And obviously with Mohammed having somewhat of a traumatic or troubled history with girls in the past, obviously the girl saying he had a bad breath and whatnot, I think him finding someone was something that he really yearned for, and family, and feeling belonged and feeling wanted. And I think this really kind of put a wedge between him and the UK MI5. So over the following years, Mohammed attempted multiple times to return to Kuwait, supposedly for marriage and to visit family, just as his father had been doing, even going so far to change his name by default to Mohammed Al-Ayyan, in the hope of avoiding further scrutiny. Each attempt failed, and each failure infuriated him. Beneath the surface, Mohammed was not completely removed from networks or radical activity. Court documents later revealed that he'd been linked to a group of local extremists, something referred to as the London Boys, which sounds like a really shitty indie band.
Or really good.
No, just like...
You don't know that?
Nah, it's like kind of the Ordinary Boys or Hard-Fi kind of vibe.
Hard-Fi, wow.
That kind. I'm just thinking then, like, it really surprised me that Bonsey went to see Scouting for Girls once. He really likes them.
Oh.
And I'll put my hands up. I judged him about that. Severely.
Was it at like a race course? Was he there for the horses?
No,
really?
He was there for them.
Oh.
He was Scouting for Girls. Not to put Bonsey, keep all this in, and not to throw Bonsey under the bus as well. I asked him, service stations, what's your dream food to get?
Go on.
Pizza.
W.H. Smith, just cheese sandwich.
Oh my fucking God, that's blown my mind.
Yeah. See, Bonce?
Thought it was going to be upper crust. You don't get many of them these days.
You don't get many of them these days, no.
W.H. Smith cheese sandwich?
Just cheese as well, just like strictly. I think he's at Iron Brew as well. I think Iron Brew, which is okay.
That's all right.
But not the cheese, not just cheese. All the things you can get. Taco Bell nowadays. Anyway, back to the case. The London Boys, several of whom eventually travelled to Syria to fight. A Home Office legal document from 2012 described them as part of a network of United Kingdom and East African-based Islamist extremists involved in sending funds and equipment to Somalia for terrorist operations. Among the group was a man by the name of Bilal al-Bajawi, who had grown up less than a mile away from Mohammed and would become a senior figure in al-Shabaab. It was during this period that Mohammed increasingly came to the attention of British intelligence. Years before his name would be linked to masked appearances in ISIS execution videos, MI5 suspected he might have links to al-Shabaab and therefore repeatedly blocked his travel abroad. The case would later prompt former British Shadow Home Secretary David Davis to criticise the approach of the UK intelligence services, stating the numbers who appear to have slipped through the net. These early encounters with British law enforcement, the interrogations and their repeated obstruction would have a huge impact on him and contribute to his gradual radicalisation. By early 2013, after repeated failings to enter Kuwait, the situation had reached a breaking point, and within weeks of another unsuccessful attempt to travel abroad, Mohammed suddenly disappeared from his home in London. His parents actually would file a missing person report for him, and 4 months later, police would actually visit his home with a chilling update. They believe that 25-year-old Mohammed Emwazi had entered Syria, and by July of 2013, the quiet graduate from West London had joined ISIS. In the weeks that followed, he was initially seen guarding Western hostages at a prison in the city of Idlib, northern Western Syria, but observers quickly noted that he was more capable than a simple prison guard. And within weeks, Mohammed was given the task of handling communications with hostages' families and demonstrating a level of control and organisation that set him apart from the other young men. It was during this period that hostages gave him the nickname John, after John Lennon of the Beatles, a reference to a terrorist cell they called the Beatles, which would comprise of 4 British accented members. And also apparently, it was the fact that they were all British, but also the fact that Beatin as well, Beatles, Beatin, there was a little pun name on that as well. And Mohammed was nicknamed John because he was leading the group. George and Ringo were more promoting Islam, so very kind of speaking about extremist views all the time. And Paul apparently appeared a little bit later on, and some people even question whether there was even a Paul there. So yeah, a bit of a odd nickname, but that's where his name Jihadi John originated from, which is very interesting one. From this position, he would soon appear in series of gruesome videos, emerging as the masked executioner the world would come to know as Jihadi John. And it is here that we move to the timeline of the world's most wanted executioner, Jihadi John.
So we begin in early 2014. There was a great deal of turbulence all over the world, often appearing on TV screens. Wars in the Middle East had fractured nations, and over in the West, governments struggled to understand battles fought thousands of miles away. Social media and the internet had become a new front, a place where images and videos travelled faster than any army, and where violence could be watched, shared, and even glorified. The Western world was watching a new threat emerge, an organisation often described as the new Taliban and the new Al-Qaeda, a force that moved faster and used modern tools of terror in ways that the world had never seen before. Amid this chaos, ISIS, or ISIL as some called it, was rapidly rising, carving out territory and enforcing its rule with ruthless efficiency, drawing in followers from around the globe. It was in this climate, as the group began targeting and imprisoning innocent foreign hostages, ordinary people, aid workers, journalists and volunteers, that a masked figure would emerge on screens with a knife in his hand, a calm British voice, and the chilling moniker that would echo worldwide, Jihadi John. He was methodical, and he was the new face of terror forged from a world already in turmoil. And it all began with the capture of 40-year-old American journalist James Foley. James Foley came from a family that adored him, parents that stood by him and supported him, a family that nurtured his curiosity and determination to make a genuine difference in the world. From his early days in New Hampshire all the way through to his work as a journalist and war correspondent, he was drawn to the stories that others typically avoided, the conflict zones and the truth hidden deep beneath the headlines. After graduating, he travelled to Libya to cover the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi, dangerously embedding himself with rebel fighters. In April of 2011, while on assignment near Braga with the US Army, he was captured by pro-Gaddafi forces, witnessing the death of a fellow photojournalist before being held captive for 44 days. During that time, Foley endured the ordeal with remarkable composure, returning to the United States after being released, only to go straight back to Libya later that year to continue reporting. Which you have to say, if you've already witnessed that and been held captive for 44 days, to still return to work and return to a cause that you believe in, within a few months it's incredibly brave, and credit to him for that. By November of 2012, Foley's path had taken him to Syria, where the civil war raged and ordinary civilians, foreign aid workers and journalists became targets for kidnappings by extremist groups. Here, he was forcefully abducted while leaving an internet cafe near the Turkish border. He was separated from his translator and taxi driver and held in a series of secret, predominantly underground locations. So this is November of 2012. We don't start seeing I don't even want to say content, but you don't start seeing video appearances of Foley until almost a couple of years later. So he's enduring now, almost a year and a half of being held prisoner in all these different really, really challenging locations. Despite prior warnings, he remained committed to documenting the human cost of war. Over many months in captivity, Foley and other Western hostages endured constant threats, torture, mock executions, and isolation. Different groups allegedly demanded $100 million for his release and safe return to his family. It was during this period, in mid-2014, that his fate crossed with a masked figure, a young man with a British accent who would soon appear on television screens worldwide. In June of 2014, a Danish photojournalist named Daniel Rai Ottersen was unexpectedly released from ISIS captivity. Before leaving, part of the terms agreed included that he would memorize a final message from James Foley for the rest of the world. A quiet letter describing life inside a cramped cell shared with 17 other multinational hostages, predominantly from Western countries. So yeah, 17 of them are held in this particular location, and apparently the group would pass endless hours by playing improvised games and giving each other lectures in their expertise simply to stay sane. Just weeks later, in July, a covert rescue mission authorized by Barack Obama sent US Special Forces teams deep into Syria with the goal of rescuing the hostages. But by the time they arrived, the hostages had already been moved. There were multiple ISIS casualties during the mission, with one American soldier being wounded. Finally, on August 12th, ISIS emailed Foley's parents directly, warning that because the United States would not pay his ransom or agree on any kind of prisoner exchange, their son would soon be executed. I mean, imagine being the family members in this situation. Because at this point, Foley there's no, as far as I can remember, there were no warnings on screen before this happened. You just saw the first video. So can you imagine the fear and the absolute horror that this family were going through during years of not hearing from their son? So as a result of this communication and the emails that they received, his parents were reportedly preparing to break American law by paying the ransom themselves, a last desperate attempt to buy their son's freedom. But by that point, events were already moving beyond anyone's control.
As Ben was saying, it's such a heartbreaking situation for the family to be in. I mean, as well, there's no way they're going to be able to pay $100 million in ransom. There's just simply no way. And yeah, the American stance on it is we don't negotiate with terrorists, which obviously if it's in your own personal situation, you'd want, or can we just, for this one time for my family, can we do that? But it's a stance they have to, otherwise what's the next move from the terrorists? They can get these things out of them. Where other countries would be a bit more kind of open to releasing certain people or sending money to release people. I know the family were able to, try and prove that Foley was still alive. They actually asked 3 questions for the captives to ask Foley, what only Foley would know, and the questions came back with the answers that proved that he was still alive, and that gave them the glimmer of hope. But yeah, just the thoughts of all the the prisoners keeping their spirits up with one another, making just from little bits of stuff on the floor, making chess games, playing checkers. It's a really heartbreaking thing, but the spirit between them, and Foley would be able to send a message back to his family, which one of the other prisoners was able to memorize, which it's a long message, but will pop up in a Facebook group. It's such a heartbreaking message where you couldn't tell if Foley believed he was going to be freed from the message. It's really hard to. There's definitely a glimmer of hope there especially when he refers to having margaritas with his gran and stuff like that. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. But yeah, we'll pop that up in the Facebook group. It's definitely worth a read and a listen.
But you make a good point, because they need evidence that their son is still alive, but also the government not negotiating with terrorists part is, number one, you don't want to set a precedent where that would encourage further kidnappings and people held captive. But number two, even in negotiating with them, are you ever going to get a guarantee that this individual will be safely returned, to his family, to his country?
I had enough time trying to negotiate with a bloody car salesman, let alone terrorists. Different breed of people, really, mate. Fucking hell. Oh, I thought you were going to say you fill us up with petrol. No, seriously, we're going to go now to BP. You're going to fill it up.
I think, Ben, you touched on it as well. It's such an admirable job to do this, because a photojournalist, and James Foley was a journalist, to be on the ground. These guys should be protected. I mean, even in war scenarios. And you're right, Tom. It's if you do negotiate with terrorists, suddenly they become a group that's almost easy to capture and manipulate and stuff. And especially nowadays as well, I think people are losing trust in journalists and stuff like that. It's a really important job to do, and it's a really scary job to do.
I also think, sorry Dan to interrupt, but I think even with that though, a journalist who's lived that experience and seen everything firsthand, I think would come back and tell the truth about everything. And it's like, it's not as black and white saying these people are doing these things. It's like, you know, a lot of the terrorist groups are born out of their people being killed, innocent people being killed. Mm-hmm. It's all like tit for tat for a lot of it. It's not just one, obviously that famous expression, the winners write the history or whatever, history books. It's like them coming back would be so powerful to have that account. But, and yeah, you're right, 100% such a brave and noble job to do.
Yeah, it should never be lost, that job. It's really important to still do that, especially being on the ground and in those areas that are struggling and fighting and in conflict. But it's just, like you both said, it's just a terrifying thought for their families they have no control over it at all.
And in a world of false, fake news, you need people more than ever to be the eyes on the ground with AI videos and everything nowadays. You need that. So yeah, it's a particularly heartbreaking one. And
yeah, I mean Foley's role here in the different parts of the world he's been working and held captive, he's trying to help highlight the suffering of the Libyan people, Syrian people. He's on their side. He's trying to tell a clear, authentic story of what's happening in the world, because so much of it gets lost, as you both have said. It's just, so sad.
Did you boys see that video of the British journalist? His name was Steve Sweeney, who was broadcasting. Yeah, and he was broadcasting with his press protective gear on, and about 20 meters behind him, missile.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Exploded behind him. It's a scary job at times, very dangerous job.
So yeah, at this point, obviously, time was rapidly running out for the Foley family.
August 19th, 2014. Then the threats became reality. A heavily produced and edited 4.5-minute video titled "A Message to America" appeared online, uploaded by ISIS and briefly posted to YouTube before being removed, though by then it had already begun spreading across the internet at terrifying speed. I remember this very well, actually.
Yeah, I'm immediately now, because it's interesting that you mentioned, Dan, at the start, how you've repressed it. And I'd forgotten about it to an extent, but the second I heard the voice, the actual voice, it all came flooding back. Because we're about to get to it, I'm feeling very anxious right now.
The footage opened with clips of Barack Obama announcing American airstrikes against ISIS in Iraq. Then, the scene cut abruptly to the Syrian desert. There, kneeling in an orange jumpsuit beneath an open sky, was James Foley. Standing behind him, dressed entirely in black, was a masked militant holding a knife and speaking with a calm, unmistakably British accent. Addressing Obama and the rest of America, he delivered a direct warning about continued military action.
This is James Wright Foley, an American citizen of your country. As a government, you have been at the forefront of the aggression towards the Islamic State. You have plotted against us and gone far out of your way to find reasons to interfere in our affairs. Today, your military air force is attacking us daily in Iraq. Your strikes have caused casualties amongst Muslims. You are no longer fighting an insurgency. We are an Islamic army and a state that has been accepted by a large number of Muslims worldwide. So effectively, any aggression towards the Islamic State is an aggression towards Muslims from all walks of life who have accepted the Islamic Caliphate as their leadership. So any attempt by you, Obama, to deny the Muslims their rights of living in safety under the Islamic Caliphate will result in the bloodshed of your people.
Following this, Foley is forced to read a lengthy statement discussing his supposed regret for America's involvement in the war, their lack of cooperation in trying to free him, also casting blame at his own brother, John, a member of the US Air Force, for his fate. He closes with the following.
I call on my friends, family, and loved ones to rise up against my real killers, the US government. For what will happen to me is only a result of their complacency and criminality.
Then the tone shifted. The masked captor spoke once more, issuing a final warning that any further American aggression would be answered with the blood of its citizens. In a video that would send chills around the globe, the man concludes by stating,
"Any attempt you make, Obama, to deny the Muslims their rights of living in safety under the Islamic Caliphate will result in the bloodshed of your people."
As the statement ended, the figure in black shifted behind him, one hand reaching down to control him, holding him firmly in place and lifting his chin. The blade followed, hovering for a moment, and just as it moved towards Foley's neck and he started to brace himself, the screen cut to black. Moments later, the video returned. Foley's beheaded corpse was shown on camera laying motionless in the desert. Before the screen faded once more, the executioner issued one final threat, revealing that another American journalist, 31-year-old Stephen Sotloff, was alive in ISIS custody, and that, if demands were not met, he would be next. It's weird as I'm reading this. I'm feeling like almost, I can feel the feelings I felt on the day of watching the video, and it's actually, I don't know if it's, if I were to watch a video like that now, having no kind of context of what's going on, I don't know if I'd feel as scared because of, like we've discussed, desensitization and all that. But I remember feeling really genuinely scared and terrified and like stunned with this video. It's strange reading it through now.
Tom's used the phrase earlier this series, I think it was maybe when we were doing the Bever Brothers case, about you seeing, being exposed to gore content as a child and your soul leaving your body. I think there was so much, I mean, I think the footage did exactly what it was intended to do in spreading fear, spreading terror, and sending a message. But I think for me, the soul leaving your body thing happened for a number of different reasons. You don't actually see, I mean, you see the kind of movement and the brace. You don't actually see any blood or any gore. But I think for me, it was the idea that Foley knows what's about to happen. He knows it's being filmed. He knows his friends, family, the world are going to see this. He's also so calm and able just to read out this pre-prepared, forced statement calmly with no emotion. And then you kind of see, as it concludes, you see, you know, some fear enter his face, and I just remember seeing this, and I'd never felt quite like this ever before. It was absolutely harrowing. So initially, obviously, this video spread considerably online, and a lot of the online commentary was stating that because you didn't see the execution itself, that it could have been staged and CGI and all of this stuff. FBI experts would quite quickly confirm that it was authentic, and then they made the, you know, they endured the difficult task of informing Foley's family, it's unlike anything you can. I'm just not able to comprehend it really, what the family must have gone through.
I remember a lot of people actually saying that it was fake.
Yeah,
lots of comments about that.
Yeah,
which I don't know. Maybe that's just a genuine reaction, societal reaction, like not believing it. Or
it's easier to comprehend it's being fake than comprehend it's real, isn't it? Like you want to think it is, and it's something so alien for you to see, and something you have seen in films and movies over the years. So you kind of think, oh well, that's just how they do that.
Mm.
And there are other things that ISIS will go on to do in terms of highly produced and edited videos that spread online that were just, it's as if they were trying to come up with new and more depraved ways to try and shock people that didn't believe in the authenticity of it. And we'll touch on them shortly. Absolutely, it's impossible to understand that they would do this to people, to human beings.
Yeah.
The FBI confirmed the video was authentic, and James's family were informed. James's mother, Diane, would state, "My son gave his life to expose the suffering of Syrian people." From that moment onwards, the Western media gave the masked figure a name, Jihadi John, a voice that would quickly become synonymous with fear, and the murder of James Foley sent shockwaves across the Western world. Governments condemned it. News channels replayed fragments of the footage, and families watched in horror as a new kind of threat emerged, one that was calculated and designed entirely to be seen. Despite this new threat, America upped its number of airstrikes over the following days.
As I said, I was in America at the time, and I got to see some kind of live reaction over there And I remember seeing newspaper headlines that were incredibly, like, front page photo of that scene that we've just described, with all sorts of different headlines of barbaric monsters, and just that image of Foley in the last moments of his life. So this, everyone in the country was quickly made aware. I mean, imagine being little kids seeing that on, you walk to school or whatever. But they were very, so there was controversy about how much some of these headlines showed as well, some of these images that they chose to use.
September 2nd, 2014. Just 2 weeks later, another video surfaced online, titled "A Second Message to America." It was familiar from the very first frame. The orange jumpsuit, and the same masked figure standing behind his victim. This time, he also had a pistol in his holster, and this time, he was standing over 31-year-old American journalist Stephen Joel Sotloff. Stephen was known as the voice for the voiceless, a journalist who focused not on politics or power, but on the everyday people caught in the middle of war. Those closest to him described a gentle, thoughtful Miami man, someone who believed those stories deserved to be heard. The video followed a near-identical pattern to that of Foley's, opening with a produced series of mishmash political context, a clip of Obama denouncing ISIS for the previous beheading, cutting to the desert, and then to Stephen, who was forced to deliver a prepared statement, this time directly addressing Barack Obama. His words, like James's before him, were not his own, framed to blame US foreign policy for what was about to happen. Then, the man in black spoke again, repeating his warning that continued American intervention would bring more bloodshed.
"I'm back, Obama, and I'm back because of your arrogant foreign policy towards the Islamic State, because of your insistence on continuing your bombings, despite our serious warnings. You, Obama, have yet again, through your actions, killed yet another American citizen. So just as your missiles continue to strike our people, our knives will continue to strike the necks of your people."
Such a visceral phrasing, isn't it? Imagine you being just on your knees in front of it. Yeah, you just can't.
It's impossible to imagine what what these men were thinking in their final moments, knowing again they see the other people around. There's no chance of escape. You'd be executed in a moment. You're just resigned to a terrifying fate.
Even though in every single walk of life this will be barbaric, but the fact that they were there to tell the story of the people that were suffering, it's not like they were there for propaganda for the US. Quite the opposite. And it's like, these people are telling the stories of your people. Like, yeah.
Well, from this moment onwards, majority of the victims become aid workers who were literally there to provide aid to people. And there's one that I remember really hitting me harder than the rest for some reason, because there was this man that had all of them are of course victims, but there was one that really resonated because he was a taxi driver from Manchester and had young children and a wife back at home, but made the decision to go and try and deliver aid to vulnerable people who needed it the most. And to end up with in this kind of position is just it's absolute horror.
This is so strange. This is unlocking loads of horrible videos that I saw around that time. It's just so hard to describe reading through this. It's and I don't know if it's because it was a period of the whole live leak stuff. I wasn't like addicted to it, but I've suddenly thought of another video around that time. I don't know if you saw it. We don't have to keep this in, by the way, but it's a group of maybe 7 or 8 men kneeling down, and two people behind him with a pistol and shooting them one by one in the head. And it was so graphic. And obviously the blood coming out the head for each shot. And the thing I remember most about this video is after the third man had been killed and dropped to the floor, the 4th and 5th guys in the line fell down as well, I guess in hopes to like play dead or try and get out of that situation. I mean, they were tied up and kneeling down. And actually, one of the executors missed, I can't remember what, the 4th or 5th guy, and carried on shooting the line. And there was a moment there thinking, oh, like, oh, this guy actually might get away with it. But obviously the executor came back to that fourth guy who was already like playing dead on the floor and shot him in the head. So graphic, so brutal and so gruesome. But again, I'd completely forgotten about that. That had been locked away in a compartment in my brain that I would likely never think about again. But this sort of thing just brings it all back up. It's nuts.
I'd like to forget about that.
Sorry.
Obviously, we grew up in a time where those videos had just become kind of readily available, but still you had to kind of find them in the corners of the internet.
Mm.
And I think we're going to talk about it a little later on, but how different, obviously, with social media is nowadays and what's censored and what's not. Like, it's just interesting to see you grew up and obviously you suppressed that in the back of your mind. But people living with that on their feeds day in, day out now. Like, what's that going to do to people?
Yeah.
Does the name Kenneth Bigley remind you guys of anything? Because
Yeah.
that's what researching and writing this case brought back, that memory, which was similar to what Dan has just described in terms of lasting trauma. It was, again, another kind of similar series of events. He had been held a hostage, British man, over in the Middle East, and a series of video messages had been sent to, at the time, the British Prime Minister, trying to negotiate his release. And eventually they didn't meet the demands. There was lots of protests about it, and then the execution video was one of those ones that was, again, like Dan said, live leak, or was it gore-ish or rotten or whatever else, and they showed the full thing. And I remember someone I used to work with kind of showing me that, and they show everything, and just the noises. I can't imagine people that have, because occasionally I get the odd accident online on my algorithm, but traditionally a lot of people fighting bulls and it goes wrong. But people that are really into it's such a weird way to say it, people that enjoy or consume gore content. There's a YouTuber that was semi-famous for doing it a few years ago, and then lots came out about his personal life. But I just cannot handle stuff like this.
Mm. So after Jihadi John finished his statement, the now familiar sequence unfolded once more. The executioner places his right hand on Stephen's chin and brings the knife to his throat, starting a sawing motion. Stephen flinches and then falls back. The video cuts to black without displaying any blood. Then the camera moves from left to right, revealing Stephen's body on the ground, with his bloody head resting on his headless torso. And then, just like before, the footage cut to black. When the video returned, the masked man turned back to the camera, delivering another warning, with yet another life now hanging in the balance. 44-year-old British aid worker David Haynes is introduced, kneeling in an orange jumpsuit, with Jihadi John stating the following.
We take this opportunity to warn those governments that enter this evil alliance of America against the Islamic State to back off and leave our people alone.
You are not threatening at all, Ben. It's a compliment, by the way.
Thanks, bro.
Leave us alone. Leave Brittany alone.
Oh my God.
Stop.
Fucking hell, that's another memory unlocked, isn't it?
September 13th, 2014. 11 days later, a video titled A Message to the Allies of America was released by ISIL. By now, the pattern was unmistakable. It opened with a clip of the then British Prime Minister David Cameron, followed by a title screen. Then the desert, the now familiar setting. David Haynes, dressed in orange, knelt on the ground, forced to deliver a prepared statement to the camera. Behind him, the same masked figure in black was waiting patiently, with a knife. David Haynes was not a journalist. He was an aid worker. Someone who had spent years in some of the world's most dangerous environments, helping those who were caught in the aftermath of war. From the Balkans to South Sudan, and eventually Syria, he worked quietly on the ground, supporting displaced families and impoverished children, delivering aid and trying to rebuild their lives that had been torn apart by wars. Those who knew him described him as a kind, selfless man, someone who chose to run towards crisis, not away from it. In March of 2013, while working at a refugee camp near the Turkish border, Haynes was abducted by armed militants. And for months, his disappearance was kept almost entirely out of the public eye. As Haynes stared forward out in the open desert, Jihadi John stated the following as he began to move towards the prisoner.
If you, Cameron, insist on fighting the Islamic State, then you, like your master Obama, will have the blood of your people on your hands.
Then, without urgency, he stepped forward, placing the blade against Haynes' throat, holding him in position as the motion began. The screen cut to black before any blood could be seen. His decapitated remains were then displayed after the footage faded in from black. 2 young daughters were now without a father, and a wife was without her husband. And just like before, the video did not end with David Haynes. As the screen lingered, the masked figure delivered one final warning, naming another name. This time it was British taxi driver and aid worker Alan Henning. A week later, on September 20th, whilst voice and facial recognition experts all over the world frantically raced to try and identify Jihadi John, the United States offered a $10 million reward for any information leading to the capture of the individual, or individuals as they stated it, responsible for the murders of James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, and David Haynes. On October 3rd, 2014, another video appeared online. 47-year-old Alan Henning was not a journalist, and he was not a seasoned war correspondent. He was a taxi driver from Greater Manchester, a husband and a father of 2. A man who, by all accounts, lived a quiet, ordinary life. But in December of 2013, he made the decision, one that would place him directly in the path of danger. He travelled to Syria as part of a humanitarian aid convoy, but simply to help deliver food, water and supplies to vulnerable families and children caught in the middle of a brutal civil war. Colleagues had warned him not to go. They told him about the risks, the uncertainty, the very real threat of kidnapping, but he went anyway, determined to make sure the aid reached the people who needed it most. On December 26th of 2013, just days after arriving, Alan Henning was abducted by masked gunmen as his convoy moved through northern Syria. And, just like the others, his disappearance was kept largely out of the public eye, until the world saw his face. Alan Henning, dressed in orange, knelt beneath the open skies, his hands bound behind his back. Behind him stood the same masked figure, holding the same knife. Henning was then forced to speak, referencing the United Kingdom's decision to join the US airstrikes against ISIS. His words were measured and controlled, but not his own. Then, as before, the man in black addressed the West. Once again, the sequence played out. A hand gripping the jaw in position, with the blade pressed to his throat, a resigned look on the face. And then darkness. When the video returned, Alan Henning was dead. And even then, it still wasn't over. Before the screen faded, another name was given. Another life placed on countdown, Peter Kassig. He was a former US Army Ranger who had served in Iraq before choosing a very different path. After leaving the military, he turned toward humanitarian work, dedicating himself to helping those affected by the war. He went on to found his own aid organisation, delivering medical care, food and supplies to refugees across Syria and Lebanon. He was trained as a medical assistant, working directly with those who had lost everything. Those who knew him described someone driven by compassion, someone who felt responsibility to help wherever he could. Back on October 1st of 2013, while travelling through eastern Syria to deliver aid, Peter Kassig was captured by ISIS. He would later spend over a year in captivity, held alongside other Western hostages, subjected to repeated violence and uncertainty. During that time, he converted to Islam, taking the name Abdul Rahman Kassig, a decision his family later said had been a personal and genuine one, and not something forced upon him.
This is what boils your blood, isn't it? That it's people who are caught in the crossfire, in the conflict, who are just trying to help bring aid and some stability and rations to an area, but getting absolutely caught up in this. And it's just so heartbreaking that these are regular people who just want to help. I mean, if it was someone from the opposite side being captured in that war, you could kind of apply some logic in that, but it's not. It's almost like it's anyone who's trying to provide aid into the area. It's just heartbreaking.
The thing as well that's kind of striking me is that these individuals were all kind of caught or ambushed or, placed into captivity like years before this. It seemed to be that ISIS, and particularly this cell that Jihadi John was based within, seemed to bring forward all these executions at a staggered time intentionally, whereas they'd been, prisoners of war, even though as they're not soldiers, they're not the opposition, they are there to help. They're now probably aware that this group of prisoners that they're being kept with is slowly decreasing in size, and they're probably being told what's happened to all of them and that their time is coming, and that's a terrifying prospect.
And I presume it's part of ISIL's technique, is because they want to shock as much as possible. And it's almost any sort of humanity in those decisions is just being lost. It's just to shock the Western world, to actually anger them. It's horrid.
So we move forward to November 16th of 2014. Another video appeared online, but this time something was different. The footage no longer focused on a single victim in the desert. Instead, it opened on a wider, more chaotic scene. A mass execution of multiple prisoners carried out by ISIS militants. And Dan, when you mentioned earlier that row of prisoners, this is what I thought you were talking about, but I do also remember the video that you referenced. Do you boys remember this one? Because this one is, again, a very visceral memory. So, again, it's a wider scene. A number of prisoners from different parts of the world on their knees, explosives tied to their necks and detonated in a synchronized motion. Around this same time period, the executions were no longer isolated. They became part of something much larger. And these videos, highly produced, deeply unsettling propaganda, not just to kill the people that they had been holding captive, but designed to spread fear and shock across the world, which is exactly what it did. I mean, we're talking about it now, still in fear and in shock and in very unsettled manner. What they do now, this is what I mentioned earlier, where it seems as though they are now saying, how far can we push this? What can we do that's different? What can we do that is going to genuinely shock and appall? And some of the things that they come up with here, and I remember all of them, are just, again, your mind cannot process that this is real and these are real things happening to real people, because this is just unrelenting what happens next. So ISIS began releasing a series of videos that pushed the boundaries of brutality and presentation. Prisoners were locked inside large metal cages and lowered into water, filmed as they drowned. And again, I remember when this one came out, there were people trying to geolocate it because it looked like it was being done in a swimming pool with like a mountainous background. And there were several men, hands tied behind their backs, and there was underwater cameras as well. So as they're lowered, you can see the struggle inside.
I remember this so well. Yeah,
it's making me feel a bit sick. In another incident, prisoners were confined in the same metal cages, but on land, doused in accelerants, and burned alive on camera. And with this one, the fuel that they were using, they covered all the individuals inside the cells with it, and then they did like a 50-yard, trail of fuel and lit it from afar, and they made the whole flame rushing towards them quite jarringly cinematic. And again, this was very vivid in terms of and graphic in terms of what it displayed. In another, prisoners were forced into small vehicles before being destroyed by rocket fire. And again, this one was filmed, and it looked like Jihadi John was in the background of this one, or someone dressed to appear like him. But basically, 4 men were shot in a small car. They then panned to reveal a man holding a rocket launcher on a mountain and firing a rocket launcher at this vehicle. Groups of men were marched to the edges of tall buildings and thrown from rooftops, their hands and feet bound. As I said, Jihadi John, or individuals dressed to look like him, appeared in the background of many of these videos. There were staged mass executions, explosive killings, and choreographed scenes of violence that blurred the line between propaganda and spectacle. Even children were drawn into it. And there were images that circulated online showing very, very, very young children basically fighting each other and being conditioned in what looked kind of like a UFC kind of cage, the way that these photos were designed. But again, people couldn't tell if they were edited, designed intentionally for maximum psychological impact, and people kind of wrote some of those images off. But these videos were very, very real. And for a time, they succeeded in capturing the attention and fear of the entire world. By this point, the scale had shifted and the message had grown louder. Then the camera cut once again. Standing alone was the masked figure that had haunted the previous videos, but this time there was no hostage beside him. At his feet lay a severed head. The execution itself was not shown, there were no forced statements, and no final words delivered to the camera. The man in black spoke only briefly, addressing the West once again. And then it was confirmed. That victim was Peter Kassig. For the first time, the sequence had changed. There was just silence. By late 2014, the videos had escalated again. One release, far more graphic than anything before it, showed the mass execution of captured Syrian soldiers in the region of Dabiq. This time there were no careful edits and no cutaways. The camera lingered and showed everything. The violence was explicit. And for the first time, the masked figure believed to have been Mohammed Emwazi was seen carrying out part of the mass murder himself. Analysts would later estimate that as many as 22 prisoners were killed in one single video.
It's such a horrifying sort of atmosphere that they're obviously still have violence at their forefront, but they're almost, this is content for them now. This is designed to do a certain job, and the humanity again it's just gone. It's like they just want to show the violence, almost like you said, Ben, in that previous video, that it's disgustingly, like, oddly, strangely cinematic with the fire.
They would have been the age growing up with those movies, you know, with those things going on, and their reference point would be films with these things happening, and say, oh, what's the best way to show what we're doing is shoot it like a film, shoot it like a movie.
Yeah. The one that's really, after going through all of those, the one that really is coming back to me is the men in the cage above the water, because there was just like atmospheric shots at the start. I don't know the correct term, but it was like kind of revealing the cage, revealing the men, revealing the water, then showing shots from different angles, and then as they're slowly...
Yeah, they're showing all the ingredients, and you put it together in your brain what's about to happen, and then you can think, no, that can't happen, and it does.
It's really hard to process that it's real. So we then move forward to January of 2015. At around the same time, two Japanese hostages, 42-year-old Haruna Yukawa and 47-year-old journalist Kenji Goto, became the next figures drawn into ISIS global propaganda. Despite repeated warnings, Goto had entered Syria in an attempt to rescue Yukawa, who had been kidnapped and detained by ISIL. Both men were eventually executed. Their deaths were once again filmed and distributed to a global audience online. And again, there were multiple dealings with the Japanese government and with family members trying to ransom these individuals. And because no agreement, again, they wouldn't enter into negotiations here, both men were sadly executed. Behind the scenes at this point, intelligence agencies were working relentlessly to try and identify the man behind the mask.
Both British and American officials privately believed they knew who Jihadi John was, but hesitation remained, with investigators admitting they needed near certainty before naming him publicly. For months, analysts pored over the videos, studying accents, mannerisms, and even attempting to geolocate the desert landscapes in the background. And on February 26, 2015, Jihadi John was finally publicly identified. The media stated that his mother identified Jihadi John's voice as belonging to her son. However, his father refuted this claim and insisted that Emwazi was not Jihadi John. And this is the Prime Minister, David Cameron, his reaction at the time.
Well, what's your reaction to the naming of Jihadi John? And also, do you have answers, or will you be seeking answers from security services as to why and how he was allowed to slip through the net?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to talk about specific individuals and specific cases, but I'd just make 3 points. First of all, when there are people anywhere in the world who commit appalling and heinous crimes against British citizens, we will do everything we can with the police, with the security services, with all that we have at our disposal to find these people and put them out of action. That is the number one priority for me. Second point, I work very closely with our security services. I meet with them regularly. I ask them searching questions about what they do. And in my almost 5 years' experience of Prime Minister, I think they are incredibly impressive, hard-working, dedicated, courageous and effective at protecting our country. All of the time, they're having to make incredibly difficult judgments, and I think basically they make very good judgments on our behalf. And I think while we're in the middle of this vast effort to make sure British citizens are safe, I think the most important thing is to get behind them. Third point in our country, we do have proper ways of calling security and intelligence services to account and scrutinising the work that they do, not least through the Intelligence and Security Committee in the House of Commons and in Parliament, which has been considerably strengthened in this Parliament by this government with additional resources. So I'm satisfied we have in place the right ways of scrutinising the work that these extraordinary men and women do on our behalf. And all I can say is, even in the last few months, their dedication and work has saved us from plots on the streets of the United Kingdom that could have done immense damage. And so I think it is a moment to stand up and thank them for the work they do on our behalf.
Then, on November 12th, 2015, the hunt came to an abrupt end. 450 days after first appearing on media all over the world, a targeted drone strike in Raqqa hit its mark as Emwazi stepped into a vehicle described by officials as a clean strike with no collateral damage. He was, in their words, evaporated. What word?
Yeah.
Deleted from the larvae.
Fucking hell.
Slayer.
Fatality. What is that? Street Fighter? No, Mortal Kombat.
They must do that when they fucking hit airstrikes. They must be like, fucking headshot! Let's go!
Kill frenzy.
Reload. Weeks later, ISIS itself confirmed his death, releasing images of him unmasked. The face behind one of the most recognisable and feared voices of modern terrorism finally exposed. Jihadi John was no more.
Late February of 2015, the remaining members of the Emwazi family fled their home 2 weeks after realising their son, an older brother, had been identified as Jihadi John. Moving first to a property in Paddington, where safety proved fleeting and risk of retaliation proved too much of a potential, they were forced to relocate again. Believed to be a hotel where they are now living under assumed names, after Omar was spotted by a television crew. From that moment onwards, they were placed under the immediate protection of a round-the-clock police security operation in London, at a reported cost of £5,000 a day, and moved to a secret, undisclosed location. I mean, like we said, his family, from things that we've read and researched, his dad worked for the police when he was in Kuwait originally, and he was a hard-working businessman. He wasn't part of the radicalisation, the family weren't, but people get angry and they blame the family members, don't they? And they put them all under the same category, which obviously is wrong, but that family obviously broken, all the families that obviously Jihadi John murdered, and hate doesn't stop hate, and it's just an ongoing cycle where sadly, but that's 2015, we're still in a situation where the world is completely, horrible things happen every day, wars breaking out everywhere, threats of violence, nuclear threats. No one's learned anything from any of these things that occurred, and this has not deterred anything else from happening.
Lots of nodding heads in the chat. It's completely spot on. Just an absolutely harrowing case. One that they achieved exactly what they wanted to in terms of the spread of fear and terror. And even now, what are we, more than 10 years later, it's still an incredibly difficult case to discuss. And the memories of seeing these videos at the end of people's lives are...
The thing is now, it's like we were saying earlier, Dan suppressing these videos in the back of his mind, and we're saying about how children now, it's like these things are readily on X or whatever, just on the timeline. Even Instagram now, you get videos of accidents or whatever happening, and they're just on there. If they did what they did back then now, would it have that same impact? I don't believe it would, because people see these things. I mean,
you touched on it, Tom, just then. Nobody's learned anything anyway. Even the recent war in Iran, which I won't go into, but when these things happen at that top level, they forget about what this does to displace people who are not in the war, not involved. They're regular human beings. They're just trying to get by, and how dangerous it can be for them. But I think you're right. If these videos came up on social media, because these kids nowadays watch anything and everything, and they have no kind of limit or boundaries in terms of what the social media's company provide. It's just so dangerous. And, you know, we've discussed it before. The human brain doesn't really get fully developed till, I think they're saying like 30 odd now. So radicalisation could be more rife than ever. But it doesn't seem to... I can't imagine it hits the same as it did back then. But I feel like people are slowly, or these companies are slowly cottoning on to how dangerous social media is. And I, for one, I know it's weirdly divisive, this, but I welcome these sorts of, I mean, at the moment, they're kind of soft bans for social media in certain companies, in certain countries. But I hope to see a day where social media is kind of like, it is restricted. But some people will be like, well, that's freedom of speech. You're kind of closing that down. You're kind of not allowing that. But I think it's so dangerous, man.
Oh, I definitely see there's so many negatives of it, and it needs to be policed in some way. I think that's completely right. How they do that and how it doesn't then lead to people still managing to do fake accounts and get on there and all that kind of stuff is a whole different argument of how that would work. But yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what you guys think about this case, because it affected us all in different ways, but it's one that really stuck with us. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to think about it. So this, guys, obviously with the series being the darkest series ever, we are doing the decompression session just to try and lighten the mood slightly. And yeah, this week I'm very excited by the choice that I made. A guy called Anthony Spry, Anthony Spry, the catchphrase guy.
Anthony Spry, the catchphrase guy. Oh, yeah. I think I know who this is.
And honestly, he delivered. And I asked him, I just said, look, Anthony, we're a true crime podcast. We're looking for some catchy catchphrases. We haven't got enough catchphrases for this podcast. We've only got, keep doing what you're doing, and that's kind of it. Maybe riddles you could throw in there, or other bits and pieces. So I said, Anthony, we need some catchphrases. And honestly, Anthony delivered.
Hello, Tom, Ben, and Dan. I'm the guy that makes the most popular catchphrases such as "Who put the Pikachu in a stew?" "I'm famished for a radish." "And is that an AI dog?" So you make a true crime podcast. I could murder a podcast. How awesome is that? And you're looking for catchphrases. So here's what I cooked up down in the catchphrase lab. This is the I Can Murder a Podcast, and we're dead serious. This is where the plot gets hot. Case closed, bozo. They had no clue, canoe. It was officially fishy. The alibi was apple pie. I'm famished for a murder sandwich. The plot thickens, Charles Dickens. The podcast where we could murder a murder burger. We're murdered on the menu. Game on, Tom Tom. Ding dong, it's time for Tom. Time to get your Tom on.
Fucking hell.
And the Dan. Hot diggity Dan. Dan like a boomerang. Can you lend me a Ben? Just ban it and ban it. When in doubt, ban it out. Hope you liked all these catchphrases. Use them as much as you like. Good luck with the podcast. You're all awesome, and it's okay. 'Cause I'm just a regular guy. When murder's on the menu, we're serving up murder. What's the matter, murder platter?
Fucking hell.
Wow. Holy wow.
He really committed that.
I loved it.
That was
The most committed yet.
Yeah.
insanely good.
Oh, I loved it so much. Just his energy. And he just seems like a lovely guy. So thank you so much.
Yeah, the positive side of social media right there.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you, Andy.
Case closed, bozo.
Yeah, big shout out, Andy Spry. Thank you so much. The effort there was unbelievable. Yeah, I gave him a lovely review. Of course I did.
Wow.
But yeah, so guys, we can feel free to use any of those. So yeah, when he sent that, I was literally, the outro fucking killed me.
Are there unique outros for every cameo he does? Because that looked like he was still wearing the same kind of clothes as he did.
I think it was unique because he said he had his catchphrases in there for us. So.
Of course, yeah. Well, next week's episode then, wow.
Murder burger here.
Full of catchphrases.
Diggity Dan.
Brilliant.
Can I borrow a Ben?
Well, there you have it, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching or listening to the episode. We will be back with another episode next week. Throughout this episode, I've been powered by a blood orange bat from the great team over at Holy. I actually need to go to the toilet desperately.
Mine's all gone.
But lovely juices from the Holy team.
Yes, indeed. No, yeah. It's been helpful, I think. We do film usually early morning, and the hydration sachets have really helped me out. You're feeling a bit more perky. And as I said before, the energy ones for going to the gym, unbelievable. I have to say, I feel absolutely buzzing when I go to the gym after I've had one of those. So please do get involved. You might have seen our lovely advert with lovely Ben Starr in it the other week.
Oh, yeah, I need to say something about that as well. Sorry. In previous episodes, I've said I don't know how they make it so milky whilst making the milkshakes out of water. Please put milk in your milkshakes. Don't make them out of water like I was doing, even though they still tasted good, made with water.
I blew his mind by saying milkshake has milk in it. Which, there you go. But yeah, hopefully you enjoy them more now, Ben. But so you can use our code ICMAP5 for £5 off your first order, or you can use ICMAP for 10% off your orders. And it's definitely worthwhile. You can get these little packs which just give you a little taste of everything, so you have to commit to one big jar, but it's great. Look, there you go.
And the thing is, we really believe in the sponsor. Holy have been awesome. And if you do happen to fancy it, give it a try. It really helps us out. It keeps us going. We really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be doing silly little ads if we didn't actually like the product. Like, genuinely really do like it. And the team over there have been really great and supportive. So we want to continue our working relationship with those guys. So thank you so much, guys, for all your support. And Ben, do you have a cryptic clue for the case?
For the catchphrase filled episode next week? Of course I do. Yes, please. Yes, indeed.
Can I borrow a Ben?
You can indeed.
Ben it and bin it.
Yeah, I did feel that one a bit.
Benjamin Carter's Cryptic Clues.
So, the cryptic clue for next week's episode, the penultimate episode of the series, those Bowie Levi's. Those Bowie Levi's.
Well, there you go. Do let us know if you can figure that one out. But yes, thank you so much for joining us, guys. We'll be back next week with a brand new case. Just a little footnote. This series, we're not doing an audience vote because it is the darkest series ever. And we picked these particular cases, and not obviously we know you guys would pick a dark one because you always do. You always bloody well do. But with this series, it's not going to be an audience vote. But there's some really exciting news that we will share soon. So we're very excited by that. And we've got some bloody merch we need to pull our head out of our butts to get out there as well, because it's bloody lovely. So keep your eyes peeled on our socials as well. And we'll be back next week. But until then, like we always say,
we say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Oh. Well, unless it's bullying people for having bad breath, and just kids can be so cruel. Stretching your bladder. Brush your teeth. Brush your teeth. Water floss.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Look after your teeth, everybody. They're really important, and you'll regret it if you don't. But by the time you get to 50 or 60, when your teeth start falling out, if you haven't flossed or looked after them, God. I mean, I'm not there yet. I don't know, but I imagine it's horrid. I'm getting close, though.
Jonathan, floss. Anyway, see you later, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you in a bit.